Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today we'll be discussing the possible legendary characters for the Demons of Chaos, more specifically those belonging to Khorne. So without further ado, let's begin. With Total War Warhammer 3's eventual release, it's all but confirmed that the Demons of Chaos will come alongside it. The Demons of Chaos themselves are essentially 4 different armies representing one of the 4 Chaos gods. These demonic legions each are representations of their demonic patron, and thus are more considered to be extensions of the gods themselves. The Demons of Khorne are much like their god, raging, bloodthirsty, and incomparably deadly. Even the least of their number is truly a terrible foe, whether this is down to their being skilled warriors, raging beasts, or even both. It is a terrible fate for a mortal man to face a demon in battle, and it is even more so when the demon is of Khorne's vile pantheon, for their overriding purpose as dealers of violent death is only all too obvious. Before we look at these possible characters, it is important to note the following. Khorne did indeed have many named characters, but most of the named ones in lore were mortal, and not many demon characters were established barring some minor roles. Please bear in mind, for those minor characters, we'll be representing them with some generic demonic images. First up, we have Castergar, a mighty demon prince of Khorne. During his mortal life, Castergar was a chaos champion devoted to the blood god. He led an attack against the goblins within the labyrinthian warrens of Nashrak's lair. After slaughtering every single goblin in the stronghold with his bare hands, he attracted enough favour from Khorne to bless him as a demon prince. Next we have Kabandha, one of Khorne's chief lieutenants. This bloodthirster rose through the lowly ranks of the 6th host through many deeds of carnage, but he was no mindless slaughterer, having long ago realised that careful strategy could make the blood flow far more freely than random rage ever could. Further wishing to earn Khorne's favour, Kabandha is regrettably more willing to actually work with mortal men. For example, during the end times when he was in service to Archaon the Everchosen, but only to suit his own wishes, there could be no greater gift to the Lord of Skulls than the blood of not just the Empire, but the entire world. Many believe this bloodthirster is even above Scarbrand in status. This was a minor character which was quite popular during the end times, and I do see this character eventually being implemented into the Total War Warhammer series, most likely in its own DLC pack where he could be introduced alongside the other special types of bloodthirster, like those of Incessant Rage for example. More than likely with a unique faction known as the Blood Hunt, which was normally represented by fans by painting the bloodthirsters and other demons of Khorne in black instead of red. Next is Cormac Bloodaxe, a demon prince of Khorne who led his fellow Norskans alongside Kurgan and Hung allies to invade the lands that had just so recently been known as the Empire. Cormac led a mighty campaign throughout the lands of the Empire, eventually even forcing Sigmar Heldenheimer's armies to retreat to the city of Middenheim. From there, a great siege began, one that lasted over a dozen days, but the 13th was considered to be the most terrible of the siege. Cormac awoke that day, knowing the will of his god was to be carried out. Before a great pit where the Norsi had thrown the corpses of their enemies in honour of Khorne, there did Cormac command the greatest warriors of 8 clans to sacrifice themselves to Khorne's glory. Pleased with their valour and tithe, Khorne took up Cormac and reforged him into a manifestation of rage. In his new form, it is said that Cormac destroyed the walls of Middenheim with just a single blow, slaughtering hundreds with sweeps of his burning axe, while his very presence drove the men of the Empire mad with rage born of fear. As we are all aware, Sigmar did eventually defeat this demon prince, banishing him to the realm of chaos. But who's to say that Cormac hasn't been building his power, and wants revenge against the Empire of Man and those who worship Sigmar like a god. Next we have Ulf Demonkin, a demon prince of Khorne who is worshipped as a demon deity in his own right. His hair and beard now burning flame, his flesh black as coal, and his teeth replaced with iron tusks. He is a demon prince who possesses the power to bestow the blessings of his god Khorne upon those of his choosing. His boon is a fairly extensive mutation, which transforms the recipient into a quasi-demonic creature, similar in appearance to himself, which is probably why many tribesmen worship him as a god rather than others. And lastly, for minor characters, we have Griddle, an exalted demon of Khorne, a great chieftain from a northern tribe who was preparing himself for war. He was a descendant of Yurf demonkin and knew well enough that his ancestor, now a mighty demon prince, bestowed many blessings upon his descendants. Griddle summoned his ancient forefather and asked for his blessings so that he may become an avatar of destruction. With great pain, he was now transformed into a mighty exalted demon, his skin now blackened, with long taloned fingers, with claws that could tear apart any suit of armor. His own strength now radically altered to become much stronger. While not as powerful as a demon prince, Griddle felt his new capabilities and now looked towards the enemies of the dark gods, knowing that if he should appease them, he would eventually be blessed and granted full demonhood. But now let's look towards characters that not only had official models but rules too. The first being Karanak, the Hound of Vengeance, endless hunter and talon of the Skull Throne. Karanak is the three-headed flesh hound that prowls Khorne's throne room. He never sleeps, for like the blood god's unreasoning vengeance, Karanak is ever watchful. As the physical manifestation of Khorne's vengeance, Karanak is Khorne's chosen hunter, the one the blood god unleashes to search out those who have transgressed his creed, or have offered insult to his colossal pride. Karanak's kills are Quicksilver perfection, the better to swiftly feed his hunger and his master's need for spilt blood. On the tabletop, Karanak was extremely quick and extremely competent in melee combat, having an incredibly high weapon skill and strength ratio. He also had a decent amount of attacks, very high initiative, and an extremely high toughness value for a Bloodhound of Khorne. Since Karanak is a Bloodhound, I don't really see him being implemented as a legendary lord, but rather a legendary hero, which honestly would make sense as you wouldn't really see a Bloodhound leading armies, but rather being a part of one. Karanak had a special rule in the tabletop known as Prey of the Blood God, which goes as follows. At the start of the game, before deployment, nominate one character in the enemy army. This is the quarry of Khorne that Karanak has come to claim. Karanak rerolls all failed to hit and to wound rolls against the chosen character. Obviously this wouldn't translate rather well in Total War Warhammer, but I could see this being done quite differently, whereas the Prey of the Blood God could be a special ability which you can use on enemy characters, and it could give Karanak increased damage against this character. Lastly, he has one demonic item known as the Brass Collar of Bloody Vengeance. This item is as follows. Karanak's collar grants the magic resistance free special rule, and in addition, any enemy wizard that suffers a miscast within 12 inches of Karanak takes a strength 10 hit immediately before the miscast is resolved. This could be translated rather well. Magic resistance is already a thing, so that's no worries. How I would see this in terms of damage is maybe any spellcaster that is too close to Karanak will actually take some damage every time he tries to cast a spell. And if that is a bit too overpowered, maybe something along the lines of maybe just increasing the miscast chance for any wizard near Karanak. I do like the damage idea though. This would make it quite interesting, especially if you're playing against Khorne, where you'll need to prepare yourself just in case Karanak goes directly for your wizards. Obviously this wouldn't be too much of a problem if your wizard is on a flying mount, but if he's on horse or on foot, it would make the wizard a bit of an open target. Next we have Skulltaker, Khorne's champion, blooded wanderer, slayer of kings. The Skulltaker is the blood god's immortal champion, the greatest of all of Khorne's chosen bloodletters. He appears before fortresses and strongholds, bellowing challenge after challenge until one of their number is foolish enough to meet him in single combat. Such duels are brief and bloody, for Skulltaker is swifter than the last beat of a shattered heart, and knows every weakness of every enemy. Skulltaker does not slay his foes outright, but shatters their limbs, leaving them helpless. Then his claws settle upon his opponent's head. Magical fire gouts from his fingertips, searing away all skin and sinew until pale bone is laid bare for all to see. After placing the skull into a coarse woven sack filled with trophies from previous victims, the cycle begins again, where he will repeat challenge after challenge until no one else presents themselves or he gets bored and decides to leave. Skulltaker is just as feared in the mortal realms as he is in the courts of the dark gods. History is littered with accounts of his appearance before the gates of Bretonnian castles, ogre feast halls, elf mansions, Nehekaran necropolises, and even dwarf strongholds, each time demanding that an accomplished warrior be sent forth to face him. On the tabletop, Skulltaker was one of the best melee characters, named ones at least, in regards to melee combat, having an incredibly high weapon skill, decently high strength, a fair amount of attacks, and once again an incredibly high initiative value. His special rule on the tabletop was known as Skulls for the Skull Throne, which goes as follows. Skulltaker must always issue a challenge or accept a challenge if one is offered. Unfortunately, I don't know how this could be translated into Total War Warhammer. The only way I see this coming out quite well is to force people into duels. Right now a dueling system does not exist in Total War Warhammer, yet it has been confirmed that Creative Assembly are considering adding in a dueling system like in Three Kingdoms. Although they're still not 100% sure if this is going to happen or not. Then this rule could be translated quite easily, where you could try to force enemy characters to be able to duel. This might be too overpowered considering that you could easily start trying to snipe out characters that might be just spellcasters and no good at melee combat. I don't know, it really depends on how this dueling system gets implemented. Maybe it's just specific to a certain type of character and so on, but we'll have to see in the future if this does get implemented. And lastly we have Scarbrand, the Exiled One, Wrathful Reaper, Drinker of Blood. Scarbrand was once the greatest of all of Khorne's demons. An eternity of battle in the Blood God's name had brought Scarbrand victories uncounted. No other demon in servitude of Khorne had piled so many skulls before the Skull Throne, or spilt the blood of so many warriors and innocents alike. But his pride, with some fanning from Tzeentch, would get the best of him. One dark day, when Khorne's back was turned and his attention was elsewhere, Scarbrand's fierce pride grew hot, and blinded by rage, he smote the Blood God with a mighty blow. Only the smallest of chinks was cut into the Blood God's armor, but even this was sufficient to draw the terrible fury of Khorne's gaze. Khorne seized the demon by the throat. The Blood God cursed Scarbrand's name and choked all personality from him, leaving only the bottomless rage that caused him to attack. He then flung the Bloodthirster deep into the realms of chaos, banishing him from his presence. For 8 days and nights Scarbrand plummeted, a fiery comet of ill omen streaking across the unchanging sky. The impact gouged the canyon into the landscape and left his wings tattered and torn. Since that fateful day, Scarbrand has wandered the mortal and immortal realms, drowning his sins in the blood of the slain, though he no longer has the wit to understand why. On the tabletop, Scarbrand was a behemoth of a model, with extremely high values for all of his stats. This was one of the best models in terms of stat-wise, and were 8th edition not so horrible for anything that wasn't in a unit, maybe it would have been an excellent character to actually use in the tabletop. Scarbrand had 2 special rules, the first being Bellow of Endless Fury, which granted him a breath weapon. This can easily be translated into Total War Warhammer, so it doesn't really need an explanation. And the last special rule was Rage Embodied, which goes as follows. Scarbrand can never lose his frenzy. In addition, while Scarbrand is alive, all units on the table, friendly and enemy, are subject to the rules for hatred. Obviously there's no such thing as a hatred special rule, so that might be a bit difficult to implement, but I would change the loss of frenzy to something else. Instead, I would give him True Unbreakable. It's more than likely that Chaos Demons will have a very similar crumbling mechanic to how the vampire counts do. And in all honesty, this works very well because it was exactly the same type of rule that they had on the tabletop. But I would remove that rule for Scarbrand, seeing as he is a monster of pure exact rage. I don't see him crumbling, I see him just fighting until he gets banished into the realms of chaos physically. But with that, we've checked out all the possible named characters for the Demons of Chaos of Khorne. What do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a bit of a discussion, especially if you have any ideas in regards to any special rules for any characters, and if you have any ideas for any possible mechanics. I'm rather curious to see what you guys think. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various different links to social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram and Discord, where you can get in contact with the Great Book team. Also in the description section below is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using our special link and also using our special code, both of which are in the description below, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons, your support means the world to us. Honestly, it's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A special thank you to our patrons Gibraltar LUSC and Bertsche for subscribing to us at our Fane level. Honestly, you guys are super cool. And a big thank you to our patron Edward Huell for subscribing to us at our King level. Mate, you're super awesome. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching. watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.